1888, the invasion. 1814, the establishment of the Native Institution at Parramatta by Governor Macquarie to civilise, educate and bring up habits of industry and decency in the Aborigines. 1848, 1866, the Board of National Education stated it was impractical to provide any form of educational facilities for the children of the blacks. 1883, Protector of Aborigines appointed in New South Wales. The Aboriginal Protection Board was established, which in turn was set up on Aboriginal reserves at a sufficient distance from towns. Segregation was the key concept of the Aborigines Protection Policy. Aboriginal reserves, on which Aborigines were encouraged to live, provided housing, medical care, welfare and schooling. The Minister for Education at that time said, "No child, whatever its creed or colour or circumstances, ought to be excluded from public schools, but cases may arise, especially amongst the Aboriginal tribes, where admission of a child or children may be prejudicial to the whole school." 1940, the policy of assimilation. Aborigines Welfare Board replaced Aborigines Protection Board. Responsibility of Aboriginal education transferred to the Department of Education, which took control of reserve school buildings and started to provide trained teachers. 1944, the Education Gazette, 2nd of October, stated that Aboriginal children of any Aborigine securing an exemption certificate may be admitted to an ordinary public school. 1946, 1948, Aboriginal children required medical certificates to attend public schools. 1950s, 1960s, Aboriginal children assimilated into local schools where the community allowed it. 1972, withdrawal of the regulation from the Teacher's Handbook allowing principals the right to refuse Aboriginal children into schools. 1976, the establishment of the New South Wales Aboriginal Education Consultative Group and the National Aboriginal Education Committee. 1982, the release of the New South Wales Department of Education Aboriginal Education Policy. Hi, welcome to Black on Black. My name is Linda Burney. Tonight's forum is about Aboriginal education, a legacy, a right, and what a history. We have with us tonight a number of studio guests, and I'll introduce them by way of Maureen Williams, who is first and foremost an Aboriginal mother of James and Nyarin. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
What school do you go to?
Redfern Public School.
Where do you go, Nyarin?
I go to Redfern Public too.
Good. Maureen has also done a great deal of work in research in drug and alcohol education and the effects of that on Aboriginal children participating in the education system. She has also worked a great deal in Aboriginal languages, and welcome, Maureen.
Hi.
We've also got David Prosser with us tonight. David has a long history and involvement in Aboriginal education. He worked at Cleveland Street High School in the inner city, where there is a large number of Aboriginal children. His role there was an Aboriginal education assistant. He is now a lecturer in Aboriginal studies at Sydney College of Advanced Education.
Hello.
Hi. We have Ian Fadrisle with us, who is currently a full-time student at the Sydney University, one of the very few Aboriginal students at that institution. Ian also has a long history and involvement in the rural education program and other programs in Aboriginal education at MacArthur Institute of Higher Education. Welcome tonight, Ian.
Hi.
We also have with us Sam Altman, who has got a valuable contribution as a non-Aboriginal person that's worked for many years in the area of Aboriginal education. Sam's been also a teacher at Cleveland Street High School and is now working in a position within the Aboriginal Education Unit at the Department of Education, although he is on this show as a person that's had a long involvement with working with Aboriginal children. What we're going to plan to do is try and talk about some of the experiences of our studio guests as people going through the education system, and then raise a number of what they feel the key issues are in Aboriginal education. So Maureen, we might throw it over to you. we've had lots of discussions about education, but perhaps if you could give people some of your impressions as an Aboriginal kid going through the system.
It was a bit different for me because I was a state ward at a very young age, and so therefore my identity was taken away from me, and I basically went through primary education as a white student, and did quite well. And then in my early teens, I came home to my family, and then was introduced back into Aboriginal society, and went on to secondary high school. I didn't last very long at all. So
Why do you think that? Why do you think that happened?
I think I had a lot to rebel against. For a start, I believe all kids, black or white, do at some stage in school. They do rebel. I think school, the period itself, it's such a long time, and from 5 years to basically 18 years of age, it's a long time to spend at school, and everyone would get sick of just sort of going through that one system all the time. I've learned a lot since then. I strongly believe that all Aboriginal children these days should be taught about their culture first before they're ever introduced to, as far as I'm concerned, white education. I think for them to handle the white education, they must be more aware about who they are.
Sure.
That they're not just Aborigines. They've got to be taught why they are Aborigines, and they need to be taught about their history too.
Ian, how about your impressions as an Aboriginal student out in Green Valley, wasn't it?
Yes, Busby and Ashcroft to be specific. Well, in that situation, it's not a high Aboriginal population in a small area, and so you have a few Aboriginal students in the school, and that has advantages and disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages of that is that there's no strong community, and so students don't really. Your identity is suppressed in that situation.
Your identity as an Aboriginal person.
Your identity as an Aboriginal person, and if you're fair-skinned and you don't fit the stereotype, then teachers just don't accept that you're in fact Aboriginal, and they say, oh yes, you're a cute kid. This cute little kid thinks that he's Aboriginal, and they seem to dismiss your Aboriginality as something that's not important.
And you felt that strongly as a young person?
Yes, I did, and I'd also, now that I reflect on the way that a lot of people reacted to the way that things that I was doing and saying when I was young, it makes a lot more sense for me now that I think back about that.
Right, what about you, Dave?
Well, growing up in Cabramatta out at in the western suburbs, one of the first school I went to was Villawood Primary, and it was around about the year that the decimal currency came in, and we were really fascinated because the $1 note had all these Aboriginal designs on them, and it wasn't until then that I realised that I was a Koori, because out in that environment, there wasn't that many Kooris living there, and sort of like when our teacher said, well, today we're going to learn about the Aborigines, and all the kids sort of looked at me, and I used to sit up the back, and we had those old flip-top desks, with the inkwells, and I just sort of lifted it up and started rummaging around under the desk, sort of, to so that, I wouldn't feel embarrassed, and we were taught things like, or we were learned things that, Captain Cook discovered Australia, and I thought he also discovered us,